All right, so first off, hi everyone. Welcome to our 7th end of work cycle update for stakeholders. We created these meetings in response to some feedback from you all that it would be really helpful for the Surfliner team to hold a regular update meeting at the end of each of our development work cycles to share what the team accomplished as well as what we're going to be working on next. Tamsin, could you please mute yourself? I'm sorry, you have a loud keyboard. And that leads me into my quick bit of housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded, so please do keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. This just really helps us with the recording quality. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to enter them into the chat as you think of them. I will go ahead and monitor them. However, in the interest of time, we're going to wait to answer questions until the end. I did see some cameras go off, so if you don't, since this is being recorded, if you don't want your video recorded, that's a really good time to turn it off as well. But either way, thank you for coming today. We're going to try to keep this meeting both informative and concise, and whether you're joining us today or you're watching this as a recording, we really appreciate your participation in today's meeting and your interest in all of the wonderful stuff the team is working on. All right, so here's just a quick agenda for today. I also forgot to introduce myself. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Chrissy Rissmeyer. I'm the Director of Digital Library Development at UC Santa Barbara. I also serve as the project owner for UCSB for Surfliner. Unfortunately, Jessica Hilt, who is my counterpart project owner at UCSD, as I understand it, is still out sick. And so I'm going to be filling in for the parts that she would normally do. But either way, we're currently in the welcome section of today's program. I'm going to do a quick overview. Then we're going to get some updates from both the Comet project leadership, Tamsin Wu and Gabriela Montoya, and the Shoreline project leadership, Alex Dunn and Amy Work. That's going to be the majority of the content, and those will be updates, and I think both teams have some demos planned. Then I am going to fill in for Jessica to just talk briefly about what is coming up in our next work cycle for the team. And then finally, we should hopefully have lots of space at the end for questions. However, before we start the official updates, I want to celebrate an important milestone for Project Surfliner. So just over 5 years ago, on November 16th, 2018, the Project Surfliner kickoff meeting was held at UCSD. And you can see by this slide, there have been so many wonderful accomplishments by the team during that time. A couple, just maybe the highlights, is that the team has sent over 42,000 Slack messages in the UC Tech Slack. I have it on good authority from Tim that we are by far the most active Slack channel, like by over 10,000 messages. On the technical side, the team has made over 5,000 commits. We've done 85 sprints, and we have 7 products that are now in various stages of development. And so that is a really big accomplishment by the over 35 individuals who have directly contributed to the project. So I want to thank everybody. We still love working with you all, and this has just been such a wonderful experience for me. So I think it's really important to celebrate that. All right, so I'm going to go into just a quick work cycle overview. So the Surfliner team, just as a reminder for those that are new, we work together in roughly 56-day on-off work cycles with a 2-week buffer on each end. So this really translates into these 10-week cycles where we do 2 4-week sprints. We have a transition period. Each development team then goes off and works on local work for 10 weeks, and then we come back together. So the fall 2023 work cycle kicked off on September 6th and ended on November 7th. With work on both Comet and Shoreline occurring in those 4 sprints. Additionally, since our last work cycle update, the team both participated in an off-cycle maintenance sprint to ensure that some of our critical dependencies were updated, and also in a Samvera community sprint that helped to push forward critical work on what's called the Vectorization of Hyrax. Hyrex is the upstream product which underlies Comet. And although we won't be providing more specific updates about either of those two efforts today, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the team's contributions outside of our normal work cycle. Also, speaking of Hyrex, just a quick note about our product names. Since this presentation is focused on our shared Surfliner work, we use the development code names for each product throughout. These names are both different than the ones used in the upstream open source communities, so Hyrex, Geo Blacklight, instead of Comet and Shoreline, but also from the branded names that are used by each campus for the individual product deployments. So a great example of this is at UCSD, it is Exhibits instead of Starlight. We use Spotlight here at UCSB instead of Starlight. Shoreline is known as Geodata at both campuses. This we totally acknowledge is a little bit confusing. So if you're ever confused about which product we're talking about, please don't hesitate to ask. But now I'm going to turn it over to Gabriella and Tamsin to share more about what was accomplished on Comet.
Thanks, Chrissy. So next up is Tamsin, Comet's tech lead, who will go over the goals for this work cycle, followed by a brief demo, hopefully. But before we go there, I think it's important to acknowledge the Comet team from both campuses. I am very fortunate to be part of such an incredible group, and I would like to thank the team for their hard work and dedication. Each member has been really quite invaluable in their support and commitment, and not just to Comet, but to all Surfliner products. So happy 5 years of collaboration, everyone. Shall we check in with Tamsin to see if she was able to get in? Tamsin?
So I'm still poking at the possibility of having a slightly reduced demo here, okay. But I'm just going to go ahead and launch into the talkie portion of this. And maybe worst case, we can loop back after the Shoreline demo to some important Comet gaps here, but I may just try to do this talk-wise. We have a credential change drama playing out, and I can't actually log in to do the demo. Instead, what I'm going to do is say that our core goal for the work cycle for Comet was to make Comet ready for batch processing. So this includes the idea of fully featured batch import export. This is a goal that I want to acknowledge up front is carried over completely from our goals from the last work cycle. And one of the things that we did in this work cycle to help us get this done in a more organized way was to really focus on improving how we were engaging with stakeholders during the work cycle. So we had especially Amy Work and Arwen Hutt working pretty consistently throughout the work cycle to run batch imports and exports, or especially batch imports against the feature sets that we were building. So as we introduced new features, they were testing them in an end-to-end way that gave us a lot of really useful feedback. And that informed both the next changes that we made. It informed a bunch of small UI changes that were small in terms of technical scope, but important in terms of the user experience doing the actual process of batch import. And it really did help us get to a place where CSV import feels like it's functioning for the cases that we're considering most critical, and that change in approach is one that we're really excited to continue to carry forward. That the idea of getting ongoing stakeholder feedback has always been part of our development ethos, and this is a case where we really got to put it into practice. We also, with the idea of supporting end-to-end batch processing, we're really interested in getting batch workflow processes done this time. So we did do some really significant work on being able to filter the workflow UI pages down by what project a thing is in and by what ingest, which batch import it was a part of, so that if you want to move objects through workflow and batch, you can do that by sort of like filtering down to the ones that you want to move, selecting them at large scale, and moving them to the next step in the workflow. I think that this is one where we did get quite a bit done, and are in a place where we will be able to use this feature set. I think there's probably still quite a bit of work to do on making it really polished and shiny, but in terms of unblocking, doing large scale imports and moving them through the workflow, we came quite a ways here, and I think we'll be using this feature set at UCSB in production very shortly. We also had a priority to do work on the workflow documentation and on finishing up a workshop, which we gave during the work cycle, about how Comet workflow works and how to design those workflows. I don't have a link to that workflow workshop in here. I hope that that's something that everybody's been exposed to the existence of already, via either emails inviting you to it or emails with the recording, or some of you I know participated in that workshop. I think that was very successful from two standpoints. One being that it helped us articulate and document how the workflow is functioning from a user perspective, and it opened up the conversation at the campuses about how we'll want to use Comet workflow. Thank you, Christy. We can add a link to the workshop recording. But it opened up the conversation on the campuses about how we'll want to use those workflows to manage object life cycles within Comet. Additionally, we did prioritize doing continued work on the M3 metadata configuration, particularly around supporting like enumerated controlled vocabularies. So if you have small controlled vocabularies that you can put into the M3 file, then those are working, and around some details like making sure that collection configuration works and not just object type metadata configuration. This was part of a priority that that was called out as part of the planning cycle at the beginning of this year, calendar year, and we have done. We feel at this point that we've done enough of M3 metadata configuration that that's not likely to continue to be work on it isn't likely to be a thing that we're calling out as a continued priority in the future. That at this point where we are with the M3 metadata configuration setup is that it's functioning, that it supports the kinds of cross-platform configuration that we needed to support to be able to do integration across the Surfliner stack, and that future development will be viewed as like largely routine and supporting specific features or user stories rather than as a general like we need M3 configuration to be solid development effort. I just put in this slide the like mantra of the first sprint that I think carried over largely through the work cycle, which was let's make bulk ingest rock solid. Can we do the next slide? Great. I'm still not, I tried to stand up a local comment, but it's not standing up in the background, so that should be fun. Okay, so to be more practical about what Comet batch processing meant in terms of the priorities for this work cycle, we really saw this development effort as part of as representing a dual focus of campus priorities that happened to be intersecting. So we wanted, on the one hand, to unblock large-scale ingest at UCSB. So that includes our large-scale ADRL migration and ongoing local efforts to identify collections on disk that can be made ready for large-scale ingest into Comet using the batch processing setup. We've done over the last few weeks locally at UCSB design on a workflow for the ADRL ingest, and we started a new local work cycle yesterday at UCSB that has as its real core priority to be ingesting doing large scale ingest through workflow into Comet. On the flip side, we also wanted to be able to support geodata ingest with Shoreline integration. So that will dovetail with everything that you're about to hear from the Shoreline team. But really the idea that what we wanted to be able to do was configure geodata metadata accurately, ingest geodata via CSV in a way that actually works for the people on the ground handling those objects. So hence Amy's regular involvement in the in the batch ingest processes, and be able to see that through to Shoreline publishing. So if I deposit a large batch of objects into Comet, then I can push them through a workflow. You're making a face, Chris. Is everything okay?
Tamsin, your audio is having some intermission issues. It just got real bad. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Is there anything that you feel I should repeat at this point?
No,
Okay.
it's just intermittent, but we can hear you, but you have a very interesting sound to your voice right now. It kind of sounds like you're a robot.
Is it better now?
No.
No.
Do you want to maybe try signing off and coming back?
Microphones, is this better?
No.
It's still bad.
You still sound like a robot.
Yeah, I am gonna refresh this whole connection. It seems like it's Zoom.
I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. Let's just take maybe a 30-second pause for Tamsin to join us again. if she's not back in a minute, I may just suggest that Amy, if you're ready to take over, we may just want to move ahead, but I want to give her a second.
Is this any better?
So much better.
Yay. Okay. Sorry about that. So this is like technical difficulty meeting day. So just to wrap this up, the desire here was very much that you should be able to do a large scale CSV ingest of geospatial objects using the actual target metadata schemas, and move them through that batch workflow process to push them to Shoreline, to publish them, I think is the word that the UI uses, and that we're all very existentially anxious about. But that was very much part of the goal. And again, conveniently, these two sets of goals intersected very closely from a technical standpoint, at least where comment development was concerned. So that gave us sort of two consistent points of reference for, is this process working? I'm now gonna hand it off to the Shoreline team, because I think that their demo will conveniently cover some significant portions of what we're about to show. I think, Amy, that you had counted that I would show the publish, unpublish work, and maybe we can just do that verbally rather than try to demo it thoroughly.
Okay, that sounds great. So thank you all. So as part of the Shoreline team, Alex and I will go through and talk about our goals. Next slide, please. So while Tamsin mentioned we worked closely this cycle with Comet to be able to support the bulk ingest and export and a lot of the other work, we were also working to support the ingest and display of GeoTIFF data into Shoreline. So that was our primary goal for this work cycle. And so GeoTIFF data is just a different data format. So things like this might be aerial photographs or USGS topo maps or elevation data. So it's a different data framework, which required some different support on the back end. So that was our primary goal for this work cycle, and Shoreline now supports the ingest and display of GeoTIFF data. Next slide, please. Alex.
Oh yeah, so, oops. So some work we had to do behind the scenes was get GeoServer to handle these new object types. So as a quick kind of architectural explanation, what we're calling Shoreline is the front end that is a discovery interface, and it has a search engine for searching for and displaying this data. GeoServer is a Java application that lives behind the scenes that stores the geospatial data and can export it in various formats for Shoreline to display for us. So when we're ingesting things into our geodata application, the actual binaries go into GeoServer, and then the metadata goes into our search engine, Solar. And so GeoServer is a pretty kind of opinionated piece of software, so we had to tweak how things work so that when we put something in GeoServer, it uses the same identifier as our as we use for our other applications. And so we had to do some cute things involving renaming zip files to match so that we can use an arc across the board instead of using just a file name or something else for the identifier. But that all went very well, and it's possible in the future we're going to migrate off of GeoServer, so it might not even be a headache at all in the future. And then that's kind of on the Shoreline side. On the Comet side, we added some new tooling so that if a collection or an object is published from Comet to Shoreline and then is either unpublished, it can be then republished. There actually wasn't a button in Comet for republishing an object. It was assumed that once you published it, it was permanently published. But especially when we were testing things out, it was necessary to kind of go back and forth a couple times. And so Matt Critchlow did the work on that to give us that flexibility in the object lifecycle. Is there anything else I forgot to mention, Amy?
I think that sums it up pretty well. So should we jump over to the demo then?
Sure.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Figure out which one I'm sharing. Okay, so this demo is going to take a look at ingesting GeoTIFF data into Comet and then having that display into Shoreline. And so here's our CSV of some GeoTIFF data, sort of the location of where it is, and we'll just sort of focus on the title right now. I've called everything demo for this purposes. And so we'll just take the CSV and create an importer. So bringing this in via the bulk racks importer. Let me move my icon. So let's just call this end of work cycle demo. And I'm a fan of the dates, so we'll put this in the Shoreline project and we'll upload the file. So this is just stored locally on my drive. I'm creating and validating. So this is going through and checking that the metadata is validated based on that. Everything's here. I'm going to continue and process it. This is the way I do it. I know there are other ways to do this as well. Oh, wow, that was fast. Let's check this again. So I'm looking at this demo. And so I have 5 entries. There were 5 items in. I'm looking to sort of check this entries process. And so some of the GeoTIFF data is slightly large. So we have anywhere, smaller file sizes up to a gigabyte. So sort of watching this and sort of this time process may take a few seconds to get it. And I know that there's a few in there. So we'll just watch it. We have data already in there if we need to publish it. Let's go a little faster earlier. So I'm actually going to go in and take a look. Okay, so I see that one has completed. So while the others are still processing, let me go in and take a look to see what this is. This is the test DEM. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to the importers. And, oh yeah, where is it? Last run. Okay, so I just want to get one more in there because it takes a second. So I'm going to jump out to the objects, right? And typically if I'm going to upload this, I'll upload it and let it run. I have the metadata. What I'm going to go through is that it was the test demo. I want to make sure all of the files are here. It shows that both of them are here for this test DEM. I have the preservation and the service file. So I should be good to go ahead and approve it and publish moving forward. So let's approve it, submit. And so this process approves it, publishes, and does what Alex just mentioned of sort of pushing all of the data to GeoServer and several other backend pieces that are happening. So I'm looking for this demo title. I'm also going to take a look at this arc because we're publishing into our existing geodata staging environment, and there are some data sets in there that we've been working with. So I'm just going to search for the CSV for a second, or sorry, the arc, and there it is. So I've got this data. I bring it in and open it up. I'm actually able to see this DEM, which is a digital elevation model of a portion of Antarctica. And I can view it, sort of the attributes are just going to give me a value of the pixel cell but I can go ahead and I can download this DEM, and I can get the original data that I've wanted. So this is great on sort of being able to publish this. We can see it. If I go back and take a look, I imagine some other items will be available and ready to publish. Take a look at my importers, 3 entries of process, so I can go back. And Tamsin mentioned, right, so this is great. We have the data in. Let's say maybe I want to take out the test from this test demo and just call it demo DEM, right? So this is, I've recognized a change. I need to go back into Comet and make that change and republish it. So the test demo from my objects, this is my test demo. I want to go in and I want to edit and I want to take out test. So first I'm going to unpublish. Yes, I want to unpublish the object. It says it's officially unpublished. Let me just, I want to trust and verify. So it has gone, it's disappeared. If I go back and I edit the title, I can take out test. I can save those changes. And now if I want to review and approve again, I should be able to go through and republish. So I republish. Let's test this out. And so the arc should still be the same. So if I actually just refresh this, there it is. And now we see that that title has changed. So that's that short ability to be able to republish the object back with some quick changes that need to happen. So Alex, is there anything else that we want to follow up on this?
Not that I can think of.
So wonderful. So we can turn this back over then to Tamsin and Gabriella.
I'm still without a functioning demo environment. Amy, do you actually mind sharing your screen a moment longer and
Sure.
And playing driver for just a moment?
Yep,
I also
go
had
for
a
it.
question for you about whether you actually have to unpublish it for those metadata changes to come through at this point. Are you if you push, do you know the answer to this? If you push edit right now and change it to demo test again, does that flow through to Shoreline? Yeah, if you just name it DEM or whatever. Yeah, let's try that.
Let's test it. Okay, so
I think that,
it
yeah,
does.
I think that should propagate right away. So I'm glad to confirm that. So yeah, so that's a neat thing about how this integration between Comet and the various discovery front ends works fundamentally is that we have this sort of like messaging queue where Comet pushes all the changes out on channels that the discovery endpoints are listening to. And if you look at the big scary Surfliner architecture diagram, that's part of that diagram and is like an important part of how we envision Comet working with the rest of the digital library infrastructure in the longer run. So that's fun to name. Can we just go to the dashboard really quick and do workflow tasks? So yeah, so this is the page with the batch workflow behavior that I'd like to draw our attention to. And if you filter this, so I think yeah, go ahead and filter this to all the ones in review. So this is the page that we're building out for the batch workflow stuff. The filters that we're expecting to have in place deployed shortly include a filter by project. So if you suppose that you're doing something like ingesting all the ADRL data and it might come through in multiple batches, then you could create a project that all of those things are going into and manage the states of of the workflow in that project. I think that there's some fussy bits about the way that this is working right now. So like I mentioned, I think that there are parts of this that we're still really ironing out from a user perspective. So like if those objects aren't all in the same project, in the same workflow, Amy, then I think that it will probably fail. But if you can see that you can filter objects, select them, and then this update workflows button appears, will you click it? Yeah. And go ahead and approve those objects for our amusement. It will probably fail in an interesting way. Oh no, it suggests successfully enqueued them. That's lovely. So probably those objects have now moved to the new workflow. Again, these filters we're building out mainly around the idea that I would want to select objects based not just on their workflow state, but the project that they're in and or the ingest that they came through. So a common flow might be I ingest 500 objects from one CSV file, and then I would like to review them and move them to the next state in the workflow all together, rather than one by one, or rather than piecemeal in some other way. Or alternatively, I might want to try to keep a whole project in the same state on a regular basis or on a rolling basis. So this is a major piece of the work that we did. We saw the publish unpublish behavior. And the other thing that I wanted to name that wasn't in the slides, but that you did see in Amy's demo, is that quite a bit of work went into the behavior on the UI about file sets and file uses, so that you can see, yeah, thank you, Amy. If I go back to an object that has multiple file uses, then from this page, I can see that this file set, so if I go to actions, then I can see that this file set has a preservation file and a service file, and that those are I can infer by their membership in the file set that they're representative of the same intellectual object. And if you click through on the file on our test.dma.zip, then we've also made substantial updates to this page to make it easier for you to see what files are in this file set and download them independently. This is something that we're still, I think, doing that sort of like stakeholder feedback change cycle on consistently, but quite a few cycles of improvement to this happened during this work cycle, and I wanted to name that while we were here. I think that's maybe what we can do demo-wise, and I don't feel like we missed too much, but it's a little awkward that we had to do it all as part of Amy's demo. Thank you, Amy, for filling in so deftly.
All right. So pretend I'm Jessica. Thank you, Tamsin, Gabriella, Amy, and Alex for all of those wonderful updates and for getting the demo done, even in the face of multiple obstacles. So we are running a little bit long on time, and so I'm just going to move through the next few slides really quickly. I have lost my speaking notes. Hang on, there they are. So just to refresh folks' memory, or to let you know for folks who weren't here last January, we did the Surfliner team did a prioritization exercise to help guide our efforts over this past year. At that point, we recently updated the Miro board, which we had used for that exercise to indicate just visually which priorities we accomplished or those that we made meaningful progress on over the last 11 months. And so these stars are, you can see visually all of the things we did. The green triangles are the ones that we made some significant progress on. This was really, really helpful for focusing the team's effort. And so because of this, we are planning on repeating this exercise in early January of 2024 in advance of our next work cycle. I have linked the blog post that Jessica wrote this year, talking about that process, if you're interested in learning more about what that looks like for us. Speaking of our next work cycle, we do have a work cycle coming up in February. It starts on Valentine's Day, February 14th, and is planned to wrap up on April 16th. This is one of those cases where we have a little 3-week-long sprint scheduled primarily because all of the spring breaks for everyone are happening then, whether it's a UC break or an elementary school or other school break. So we do try to add in a little bit of flexibility. You'll notice that there's no products assigned to that. That's because of this prioritization exercise is going to help us ensure that we know which products and what work will happen in those sprints. So this will be updated following that exercise. Finally, just a reminder of all of the different ways that you can stay up to date on what the team is working on. During this off cycle, I know there is a huge amount of work still happening on both campuses. Speaking for UCSB, we're working on beginning migrating our ADRL content. I am assuming that there's sort of continued testing related especially to geospatial content at UCSD. So you'll still see a lot of activity in the Surfliner UC Tech Slack. We obviously have no problem with sending Slack messages there since we've sent over 40,000 of them. We do also have a slightly less verbose channel, Surfliner Announce, where we try to share big announcements with all of you. So if you don't want 40,000 Slack messages but are still interested in occasional updates, please consider following us there. We do have a blog. It's at surfliner.ucsd.edu, where you can just learn more about the project in general and access all of our past sprint reviews and past work cycle updates. And then if you have any specific questions about any of this, please don't hesitate to contact me or Jessica or the individual product tech leads or product owners for the product that you have a question about. And speaking of questions, if you have any questions, I have not seen any come into the chat, but I will encourage you to either post any you have in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand or just shout it out.
I have a question. When's the 5-year anniversary party happening?
That is such a great question. I am hoping that we can have in-person all hands and maybe a belated birthday celebration as part of that, or anniversary. I'm not sure what's appropriate here, but I'd love to see that happen. And it's something that where Jessica and I have been talking about how to get that scheduled and happen. It sounds like it's likely going to be at UCSD when it is scheduled. I'm going to let awkward silence sit just a little bit longer to let folks either enter in additional questions or.
Okay.
Oh, I heard someone.
Spin up the stuff.
Thor, do you have a question? Nope, I think it was just an accidental unmuting. All right. I'm going to say once again, thank you all for attending today's work cycle update. Again, please feel free to reach out if you think of any questions after the fact. We are very active in Slack and via email. And thank you to all of our Surfliner team members for the amazing work that you have accomplished in this work cycle, but also over the last 5 years. So thank you, everyone.